Welcome to the Real Mom Hub, where we celebrate the beautiful, profound transformation into motherhood.
It's a journey that shatters and rebuilds us in incredible ways. And did you know there's even a word for it?
It's called matrescence.
We share the voices of everyday moms in the trenches, honing and discovering their natural instincts and superpowers.
We air out the hard parts of parenting people don't like to talk about.
We talk to experts to help us make sense of our bodies and our minds.
Because matrescence leaves no one unscathed, and let's be honest, it's as hard as it is joyful.
So why not embrace it? Lean into the growth, the struggle, the magic. This is your opportunity for complete and utter personal transformation.
Come with us. We're so glad you're here.
And you were ice skating on it by yourself.
Yeah, so I prefer to like jog or lift. Well, I really like jogging because I just like being outside to get exercise. But during this winter, it's just nice to, I don't know, mix it up, do something else. So usually we cleared off part of our pond and we take the kids skating down there. So then I'll just go down there and like play music and skate in circles just to get some exercise. I don't know. It's great. It's like living the best homestead life.
I'm
so
gonna
nice.
come over with my skates some night.
I'm really looking forward to when the kids are a little older to having like skating parties or like, yeah.
Oh, Emily, this is Emily.
Also,
Emily,
hi.
meet Emily.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Seriously.
I read so many great things.
Right. And
I
I've
feel
heard
like
a lot
I partially
about
know
you
you.
on the podcast, but you know.
Oh yeah.
We were just talking about that, how like people know things about us that we forget. We didn't tell them, so like we don't think they know it, and then they, yeah.
You're like out to drinks. And you're like so big update, and they're like, yeah, I heard that last week.
Can you just give us a little like, this is my life right now, kids, husband, like what's your day to day?
Yeah, so we have Eric is my husband, and we have 3 kids, ages 6, 4, and 1.5. I stay home with them, and I homeschool the oldest, Lyndon. She's in kindergarten, so it's like not that intense, We just sit and like do a little reading and math every day. And I live on Homestead farm type thing. So Eric works full time as an agricultural engineer, but we have a herd of beef cattle that he mostly manages. And then I help him with the marketing side of it. And I also grow a huge garden, take care of pigs and chickens, sell eggs to our friends, preserve a bunch of produce, make bread, like I just cook a lot basically. Like I'm just in the kitchen a lot. So yeah.
And you were a science teacher.
Yes. I taught for 3 years full time. When we had Lyndon, I went part-time. And then after Sigurd, which was awesome, I really enjoyed that. And then when Sigurd was born, we decided to move. We were living in Madison. We decided to move up here. So at that point, I didn't look for work and decided to stay home. Yeah.
When number 2 came along.
Yeah.
I have so many questions for you. I'm going to really struggle in this conversation to straddle the line between like, tell me everything about homesteading and your life. And also like, hey, we're here to talk about matrescence.
I warned her.
Was your entry into motherhood?
Yeah.
My brain's already going so many different places. I want to start with the matrescence piece. I'm curious, first of all, what surprised you or was really unexpected for you when you first became a mom?
I know what it meant to be tired, right? Like when you're in college, you're tired.
Yeah.
It's so different. And I had times when I was like, I'm so tired and I don't know when I'm going to get sleep because I have this test and that thing that like, so there were like moments of like kind of desperation, exhaustion, if you know what I mean. But nothing like getting woken up every 3 hours. Just like, there's just nothing
and
like that.
And a good night.
So when I'm thinking like the very first thing that surprised me, at the same time, like, I couldn't believe how much I loved Lyndon, like the second I saw her. And I realized that I'm lucky and that not every woman experiences that. But I was like a mama bear from day one. I was like, this is my baby. Like, actually kind of hard for me when we were at the hospital after she was born. And I didn't know what we wanted with visitors. I realized I didn't really want visitors, but then just people around, and it was hard. I didn't know how to tell people what I needed. Like I would be like, okay, I need space, and they knew, and that's just it, right? But it's just crazy to have these feelings of like I need to be with this baby, and no one else can be here. I was just not ready for that at all.
I wasn't either.
Yeah,
and I wasn't that extreme. Like I wanted people there, but only certain people. And I had such a visceral reaction to like the idea of strangers or yeah.
Yes. I'm usually such an extrovert. I want everybody to come over and hang out all the time. So it was so weird. And it was very much like, I think in a few weeks, I wanted people to visit and I wanted people over. It was just like that initial bonding phase. I didn't know what that was going to feel like at all.
Were you able to identify that in the moment, or was
No,
this you looking back being like,
no,
wow,
I
I
just was
had
like trying not to cry. Like, cause I just,
oh
like I just,
yeah,
it was
I do
hard.
know.
It's just really hard. The time we had our second was born during COVID, so no one could come anyway. And I was kind of like, great. But then parents and Eric's parents wanted to be respectful of, but I think it was also hard for them, which is understandable. They want to come meet their baby, like or a grandbaby, like I totally get it. But I was ready for it the second time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's good to hear as someone who has
When
yet to experience that.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys experienced this, but maybe like a few days into parenting, I was sitting on the couch holding Lyndon, and Eric just looked at me and looked at her and was like, I know where babies come from. And I know like you've been pregnant for 9 months and I've seen you pregnant, but I'm still just like, where did she come from? I don't know if you felt like that, but it's just
Same,
like,
Eric.
yeah.
Same.
yeah, like where did they? And I still look at them sometimes and I'm like,
Yes.
wow, you're here. This is amazing. You're so cool. So
Yes. So what are things that you feel like future mothers should know that aren't talked about?
I really think they should hear how joyful it is. I think a lot of us, I mean, but in a way, right, you either hear, oh, it's so hard, or oh, it's amazing. And I feel like day to day, I never experience either of those. Like, right, like, okay, I have had moments where and often where it feels very, very hard, but I never want to look at my children and say, parenting you was so hard. Like, I don't want
Mm.
to use that language in front of them. But sometimes I have to remind myself how awesome it is. Like, especially, I feel very blessed that I can be at home and be with them so much during the day. And when that's your day to day, it's hard to remember how lucky you are to be able to do that, and that not everyone gets to have children or gets to spend that time with them. So I think I would want moms to know like what makes it so awesome is that it's so hard and that it totally changes you. And rather than just saying it's awesome and it's hard, it's like it's awesome because it's hard and it changes you and you're not the same person afterwards. Like getting back to that matrescence idea, like I wish I would have like had a better attitude about of like this isn't something I have to push through, and when it's really hard it's also such a gift.
I think if I were to go back and tell because there were a couple years where I was loving my marriage. I was married 7 years before we had Kieran. Like, and I was like, maybe I don't want kids. Like, I actually might not. I've never really wanted babies.
Yeah.
And I think like after this experience, I think what I would have told myself or wanted myself to know is the transformation is so incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. Like I'm throughout the hard, really appreciating the person that I'm becoming.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how you're supposed to show that or talk about it. Like on social media, I think I see a lot of moms complaining or saying this is
Yes.
hard. We deserve better. Let's be angry. Let's be upset about
Yeah.
this. And on the flip side, you see, I mean, I think this is where a lot of like the trad wife kind of, I don't know, symbolism comes in where they're just like making the perfect food and everything's beautiful and
Mm-hmm.
joyful. You see those two things and you don't really talk about, I don't know how you show the hard being powerful and good. And I think it is a missing piece of the conversation. Really, it's cool to hear you bring that up.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even like I can definitely talk about concrete changes or whatever, but just something beyond words that don't it doesn't make you feel super happy necessarily. I guess that's what I feel like that's what we're looking for. We're like, oh, this is going to be really good. It's like, oh, it's going to be really fun. It's going to make me really happy, whatever. And it's like, well, I don't know, it's just not like that, but it still transforms you. Yeah.
I feel
And
like
yeah.
being in your kitchen would kind of like like maybe we should do a little doc of Emily prepping all of her food in the
Gosh.
kitchen because we talked about how we should do a whole episode with Emily Swanson on trad wives.
Yeah.
Eh,
Yes.
eh,
Oh, I thought you were
Well,
going to say
how
homesteading.
well homesteading and trad wives, right? And she was like, "Oh, I hate that term."
I
And then I
hate
was
that
like,
term.
but then I was like, but you kind of are. But my point is, like, it's not like you see in social media. Like, yes, you are
Yeah.
making all of your food, you're grinding your own wheat and making your own sourdough, but you're doing it like while there's a kid crying, and
Yeah.
it's not like this perfect loaf with like wheat carved in the top, and like, but you're doing it and you're making all this food and it is joyful, even though it is hard. I just feel like being
Yeah.
in your kitchen sort of exemplifies that. So you did it. Good
Thanks.
job.
That's great. Well, yeah, maybe I'm not on social media, so I don't necessarily know like what the current trad wife trend is. But when I hear that term, what I think of is like 1950s for some reason.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I want to be like, I'm just earthier than that, I guess. Like, I'm not walking around our
Yeah.
house in a dress all the time. I don't know. So,
So in my brain, I guess I would clarify. Whenever I say trad wife, it's really hard for me to like take those words seriously. I don't. I guess for me, trad wife seems to be like a frivolous trope
hmm.
Mm.
versus homesteading. I would say to me is very values based.
I could see that. I think the
I
other
don't
thing I
know.
really dislike about it is that like traditional means something different for everybody.
Mhm.
Like growing up, my mom worked time when we were younger. I went to daycare. I like definitely grew up in a very career focused mindset, career focused environment. So I don't feel like what I'm doing is super traditional, if that makes sense. Like I felt like deciding to step away from a career was really breaking the mold and going against previous expectations I had. My parents are now 100% like they were never opposed to it. And they're supportive. So I don't feel like I'm like sticking it to my parents or something like that. Because I mean, I'm literally at their house right now while they're watching my kids. Like they're very supportive. But it still like wasn't what I grew up thinking. So I don't feel like I'm keeping up a tradition as much as like forging the path that works well for our family.
And
So,
it sounds pretty countercultural. Was that something, that choice that you made to move into this life after you had two
it,
babies, was that a surprise to you that you wanted that you made that choice? I guess, how did you arrive?
well, it depends on which Emily you're talking about. If you're talking to like 16-year-old Emily, living in Marathon, Wisconsin would not be my goal. Like, it wasn't my goal. I always wanted to be a scientist growing up, and I also wanted to be Laura Ingalls. So, you know, I guess I'm doing one and not the other.
I can see a lot of crossover there, though.
Yeah, you're kind of doing both.
Yeah, like, well, I wanted to be a scientist and I wanted to be a science teacher at different points. That not
What a,
doing a lot with that right now, but so I think that might have surprised my past self to some degree.
what about your freshly married past self? Like before you're even pregnant with Lyndon,
Mm.
would that Emily be surprised?
So Eric and I knew we wanted to farm together when we were dating. Like we both had really strong values in local food and conserving land and resources that way. I mean, it's like his whole job. Like his job is to work with farmers to help them conserve their soil and land resources. Like, so he's pretty dedicated. um, so we knew we were going to at some point. I distinctly remember at one point being like, I really don't want to try running a business when we have small children. And I was like, I really don't want to move up there until like our kids are older. But then more and more we realized like we're going to get settled in a community, and why get settled in here if we're not going to raise our kids here? And then the opportunity came for us to move, and we were just ready, I think, to get out of the city, and like fun to sit around and talk about doing something is fun to dive in. So yeah. So I think I was surprised how quickly we jumped into it, but now I'm like, I don't know why we would have waited any longer. So yeah.
Oh, you still love Madison. Like you two share that
To
special
love
joy, I think,
Madison.
of
It
just
is a
like
special place. Yeah. It was, yeah. And when I go, I'm like when we go back to visit, I think I just have such good memories, but I'm also not like, oh, I wish we were still here. Like I haven't had that thought. I wish I could hang out with certain people more often, but that's like it. Okay, but when I say that, that was the fact that when we started, when we had Lyndon and Sigurd in Madison, we couldn't do a lot of the stuff we enjoyed doing in Madison. And maybe you had that experience too with Seattle, Emily. Like we weren't doing much like we used to. And then it was COVID. So it was just like,
Yeah.
so it was
yeah,
just kind of like,
that's
we
so
haven't had a
true.
lot of fun here for a while, you know? But, I mean, that's not true. Sorry, I
Bye.
don't mean to say it like that. But it was, we were doing different fun things in Madison, like taking Lyndon to the Children's Museum and like, I don't know, going ice skating at Tenny Park was really different when we had a baby versus when we just went like at 8 o'clock at night. And it was just different. So
Way less romantic, way more like fussy, cold,
cool. Like,
difficult.
oh, we're going to do this for a half
Yeah.
hour. That's great. Glad we got out of the house. Yeah. Like,
Yeah. No, I think
So
about that a lot. It's hard to, be in a community, have a major life shift, and then totally change your whole perception of like what that place is based on your
Yeah.
current reality.
Yeah.
It's a different feeling of like, oh, I miss those days. It's not like, oh, we could go back and recreate that. It's like, that's gone forever, whether we're there or not.
Yeah. And that was, I don't know, that was fine. I definitely spent time missing it, but now I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. There's different phases of life. We have lots of things now that we enjoy that we couldn't there. So,
So we were talking, you've been listening to the podcast and you were really excited to talk about matriarchy because you were inspired to talk about it after seeing the Broadway version of Lion King
yeah.
last weekend. So that's
Oh,
why
this
I
is
really want to
yes.
hear
Okay.
what it is.
So,
Let's get earthy. Let's
whenever,
go.
right, yes, like Lion King, Circle of Life, all that. Whenever I heard other people answer that question on the podcast, I was like, wow, that's a hard question. I don't, people's responses I thought was so interesting, especially.
Are you referring to the question like when you hear the word matriarch, what comes to mind?
Yes.
Is that the okay?
That's what I'm thinking of. So it was interesting
Okay.
to hear those responses. I was like, I haven't thought of this. I don't know. And then I'm sitting in The Lion King, which like I loved that movie when I was a kid because right, we're from the 90s, great. And
Oh yeah.
always loved the music. The music in person is like a whole,
A
it's
million times
incredible.
better.
The
It
costumes
is.
are incredible. Like I just had a great experience. But this like extra scene that's not in the movie where dressed as lionesses and they are doing this beautiful like hunting dance together.
Oh,
I know what you're talking
Okay.
about.
So they come on the
Yes.
stage, and I think Nala, like young Nala, is with them. And I was like, this is the matriarchy. Like it just like hit me like a lightning bolt because I was like, they're working together with their young. And I was like, that is like what I think of when I think of like women is when we're at our best, is when we're working together and when we're sharing that with the young. And maybe that means like literal young children, but that I can also think in like workplaces of like when I was a teacher, like the more veteran teachers, like taking me under their wing kind of thing, right? And like working together that way. I also love in the story the fact that like we see that Nala is like stronger than Simba. Like she can pounce on him even when they're grown up. I love that. But so clearly like she could take down Scar theoretically, right? He's the bad guy. She could beat him up,
I
whatever.
never thought of this.
Right. But
Love
so like
this.
if you wanted a more like strictly feminist reading, the lionesses would probably take over, but that wouldn't be as satisfying an ending, I think, than like her going to Simba and being like, this is not your full potential. Right? Like Simba's off doing his thing.
Ooh.
I know.
He's
I'm shook right
he's
now.
like content. He's fed. He's got some friends who aren't really challenging him. And then she's just like, but he's not happy. We see that he's not happy. Then Nala's like, hey, you're meant for something better than this. And like that's what makes Nala powerful. It's not the fact that she's like physically strong. It's the fact that she like sees the potential in him.
I'm sorry.
So,
Okay.
so anyway,
I'm just
so I
having a
was just
moment.
really excited about this because I was like, this is what makes women powerful, is like seeing the potential in others and helping them reach that potential.
Okay, let me say it back to you and so you
Whoa.
started with women laboring, working, like
Yeah.
together.
Mm-hmm.
But like if we were to put that into modern terms, an inclusive workplace, we're going to include the young. Like we're just going to include
Right.
everybody, and it's going to be this holistic community effort. And it's not about like helping people find their place necessarily. It's all just like, okay, here we are. This needs to be
doing
done.
life.
We're doing it together. We're just
Yep.
doing it. We're empowering those to do it. So there's this kind of physical, I don't know, like social structure, the work, whatever that
Mhm.
is. And then you touched on the physical strength,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't know how we modernize that for women. And
I mean, we birth
Okay,
babies. We have to, like
oh
just
God,
the
yeah,
physical,
totally.
right?
Even
Like that's what
toting
I'm
around my
thinking of. And
toddler.
like I think we often try to like we want female strength to be like male strength. Like if a guy can do that,
Right.
then a woman can do that. And
Right.
I just don't like that. Like I guess
Yeah.
fine, whatever. But I just like no, we have like a physical strength that men can't even fathom. Right? Like they don't know what
Yeah.
that's like to carry a baby and what's like I remember telling Callie, like after Hazel was born, even though it's like my third child, I breastfed. I'm like, I cannot explain how exhausting breastfeeding is. Like you wouldn't think it, but it just is physically draining. So anyway, so our bodies can do these like amazing strong things that is a part of us. And just because like, right, I'm not pregnant or breastfeeding right now, like I still have that capability, right? And that's part of me, my womanhood.
You also probably
Whoa.
still bleed every month, which is frankly offensive to me. Having like after popping out a kid, I'm like, was
Why
I
are we
just
still doing-
brainwashed into like submission, into just being like, oh, it's normal, we're not going to talk about it, from ages 12 to 30. Like, hello, like this is so stupid. Like every month, come
I
on.
know. I'm still like the first time I found out like a period was a thing, I was like, really? Like, really? That has to
Can't
happen
be
every month?
right.
And every month, like literally every month, I'm like, do we have to do this? Like, why are we doing this?
I just stopped asking the question for like a decade. And now I'm back on the question. I'm like, okay, this is
Like you accepted it for a
I
little
did.
bit.
And now I'm just like, listen, I want to be natural. I want my body to do what it's going to do. But like, I'm sorry, if this happened to men, the workplace, everything would be different. The whole world would be different. Anyways, that was tangential. Back
That's
to the
fine.
Lion King,
Back
because
to the
I'm
line.
still stuck on
I am
this.
so shook.
So then you bring it. So we just covered like work, labor. We covered like the physicality, and then to bring it all home, we've already created a better world in this matriarchal Lion King world. To bring it home, you're like, oh, also we've got like the emotional, psychological challenge to fulfill your full potential. Like we can see that and challenge you to do that and do the work
Yeah.
yourself.
And that's what I think.
Whew.
Oftentimes matriarchy, right, can be a like foil to patriarchy, and there's all this like power associated with that, for better, for worse. So then I just don't like it when it's like, well, women have to have power too, or like or that can happen like with careers. Like my husband has a career, I want to have the same career. Or like if he's getting this, how can I have that? I don't know. I just like really like it when I can get myself out of that mindset, and I can really think like, what's best for our family? Like what's going to help Eric be his best self? What's going to help me be my best self? What's going to help our kids grow? Like what's going to make our home feel like a nurturing place? Like that's when I feel like I'm in the right mindset, and that's what I think matriarchy is about.
That is beautiful.
Yeah, I just
Thanks,
wanted to
Lion
sit with
King.
that.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to link the dance, because when you visualize it too,
Yes,
like
I don't
with the
know what
music
it
and the
is. Yeah,
It's beautiful.
and especially like my mom even commented on this without me like prompting her or telling her any of these thoughts. She was like, "It's so cool that Nala's there," and I was like, "Yes, there is something so powerful about young Nala being on the stage, like because Nala's like a kid at this point in the story. That's having that young girl with like the women in her life, like bringing her up." And for me as like a homesteading mom, that's a huge reason I want to be home with my kids and doing these homesteading things. It's not because we need, freshly milled flour for bread or whatever. It's like also because Lyndon's like over there, like helping me knead it and like learning how to make bread with me, like that's what it's really about. That's what the gardening is about. That's what like, and I have to tell myself this 50 times a day when a kid like steps on a plant that I spent 10 weeks growing, or like, or, just like messes up my plans for the day, because that happens all the time. But I'm like, well, this is what we're here for. Like, we're here to learn together. Like, that's the point. I'd love to act like I actually act like that all the time. I don't, but that's like what I'm trying to, that's what I tell myself I should be. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna circle back to you talking about the transformation of motherhood. And are there any traits that you could describe that you've gained or that you've honed since becoming a mom?
Anger.
Rage.
So bad. Like, I'd love to be like gentleness, patience. But this really, okay, Callie and I are in a book club together with other
That's
moms,
really
which is such a
funny.
gift. And someone said the other day, like, I didn't realize I was an angry person until I became a mom. And I was like, that I just feel so seen and heard. Because like, yeah, there's just nothing like mom rage either, right? There's nothing like mom love, and there's nothing like mom rage. I don't know.
Oh,
So like,
wait, that was it. That was it right there. That's the clip we need. There's nothing like mom love. There's nothing like mom
it's
rage.
just how it is. So it's still something I'm like learning a lot about. Like and that was something kind of like day one of, I didn't know I would need to bond with this baby intensely, and here I am, like with all these feelings. Similar, like I've had times where I'm like, I just had no idea I could get so mad about something so little. Like I had no idea I could do that. So then, and then all of a sudden you're flustered and mad because you're mad, and that's like that happens. So yeah, I would like to have something more poetic to say. I'm just gonna be honest.
Is it anger? So anger, I think for me lives pretty close to the skin, and I can pop off pretty quickly and then settle quickly, move on.
Mm-hmm.
Not proud of it. It's just kind of a
Right, right.
reality. The mom piece for me, it's like certain things I thought would really piss me off, I'm actually really chill about. So it's like
Oh, really?
the
That's
mom,
great.
the mom, no, but then there's,
Oh.
so there's the mom love,
Mhm.
and there's no anger. We just skip anger. We just go straight to
rage.
mom rage. So I'm like, I
Wait.
thought I was well acquainted with anger, and then being a mom, it's just different.
Different.
We
It's just
skip
different.
that part.
Yeah, and I wonder if like I would love it if in, however many years when if someday my kids become mothers, I wonder if there'll be more research because I feel like there must be some kind of different chemicals in our brain that change the level, or it's just a different feeling, anger
Yes.
toward things that are legitimately upsetting, but at the same time it's so easy for me to step back from someone else's 2-year-old and being like, oh yeah, they're being a little whatever. They do
Yes.
that. They lie. They don't listen. Like what, it's so easy to shrug that off on someone else's kid. And then when it's yours, like like getting that perspective has taken me some time. Especially because
Even
I didn't spend like
yesterday.
any time around small kids like at all. So like part of that, like I just needed more
Oh,
time around Lyndon and Sigurd. And now by the time we get to Hazel, I'm a little more like, okay, I've seen this before. Like, hopefully, I mean, Hazel's not really an age where she can make me mad yet, but I'm hoping that a little more perspective. This is something I would tell moms. Like, I really thought if you like made sure they napped and made sure they had like good snacks with like some protein, maybe your kids weren't going to have tantrums. You said the right words. Like, I had no idea that isn't that funny? Like, it's such a
like there's
joke.
a formula.
No, like I really thought like when kids had tantrums, it was because like you hadn't managed something right. And I had no idea that it's like, that's just something that happens, right? Like, and unfortunately, I think this is a cultural thing when people see their kid having another kid having a tantrum in a store, they're like, oh, the parents aren't, why is that kid having a tantrum here? And now I'm like, oh, dude, sorry, that happened to you right here, right now. Cause obviously you can't do anything about it. Like,
Or it's
I
like,
just
don't
didn't
look
know.
at that. Like, it's like judgment on the parents, or like I'll watch
Yeah.
people like avert their gaze. Like, don't look at
Yeah.
the screaming kid. When it's like, can we just normalize this, please? Like, it
Right.
just,
And I've had like moms like give me look like it's all right. And I'm like, thanks. Like,
You
thank
see
you.
me.
You see me, Or they'll just like me a little smile and I'll be like, yeah. Or like kind of laugh with them. I'm like, yeah, look at this kid. Isn't it ridiculous? Like, I just
This
didn't
is
have that
horrible.
perspective when I became a mom. I had no idea. So
so you worked around little kids a lot.
yeah.
Did you always know you wanted to be a mom?
I think so. Like, I definitely always saw it happening somewhere in my life. For a long time, it was like, oh yeah, like that'll happen sometime after I get like established in a career. And that perspective changed in college when I realized like when I was deciding if I wanted to pursue like a really hefty science career or not. Part of that piece was I think I just realized I would much rather be teaching. Like I think that just fits my personality and skill sets better. But another big part of that was like I don't think I can be the mom I want to be and build the community I want to build and live the lifestyle I want to live and like keep working the way I'm working right now. Like I don't like this. Like one of the big things was I was chatting with a professor and talking to him about him and his wife's work-life balance. And she also had a job in like conserving water resources. She had a job protecting rivers, like very cool, high level environmental work. And he was talking about how they balance that. And he made the comment that if they only order out once a week, they're doing really great. And I was like, I like make an active point not to cook my own food and to not order out. I was like, I'm not going to do that. Like, it was a moment when I realized like this type of career isn't going to work with the way I want to raise kids. But so I went into teaching, and I think I wanted to teach also because I liked being around kids. But I wanted to be around like 12 to 18-year-olds. Yeah. I definitely like never thought of being an elementary school teacher. So
It's interesting. Like so many of the things you're talking about right now, like your previous self before even meeting your husband, sounds like you were considering all these values and
yeah.
holding them close to you and deciding that that's what you wanted to pursue.
Yeah, but I also was like, if I never meet the right person, when I say the right person, I don't necessarily mean a person who's going to live in Marathon, Wisconsin and raise cows, right? Like it wasn't necessarily I had to move on a farm, but I knew I wanted to like have quality time with the kids, not have my career be first, to make sure we had time together, cooking and doing things together at home. Like that's what I mean by that. Um, I also knew I could be happy teaching if like that person ever came along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think, because Lyndon was like you experienced matrescence with Lyndon, but
Mm-hmm.
you were still teaching. Do you think that would have like your vision of homesteading and having your kids involved in all of that would have been a lot harder had you not been working. I'm just thinking like you wanted to do this work with
Mm,
them
hmm.
together, but that could have been so frustrating if you decided to stop working then and had this baby and then like couldn't get anything done. I don't know. It's just like amazing
Yeah.
how life works out because
That like really
that
summarizes how I felt though, because
still.
it was interesting. Yeah, letting go of the teaching thing because we were still in Madison, but I was like, we did have a community garden
Mm,
plot and I was trying to preserve food. Like I tell people this all the time. Like you think you need to get a homestead and like live out in the country to like do this stuff, and you really don't. Like we would grow some of our own food, we would get produce from the farmers market, and we would like do a lot of freezing and canning at our house in the middle of two busy streets. Like we would go to the park across the street, we would go hang out by the lake, we would, so we'd have that time outside. We did the backyard chickens thing. Like, so I was trying to balance a lot of that, not even thinking of it as, and this was what made it so stressful for me. I think I wasn't thinking of that as like an extra thing. To me, it was always like, this is going to happen. So I didn't realize I was putting a lot on myself trying to do that and trying to work part-time because it was only part-time, right? Like I'm not trying to do this full. Like I just didn't know how you just can't. At least for me, couldn't balance that much, or
mhm,
was balancing it, but I didn't think it would feel like that much, but it really did. Yeah.
mhm.
So, and even now, like I have to remind myself all the time that like homesteading, like the work I'm doing is a part-time job. Like I am a stay-at-home mom and I get to do that work with my kids all the time. I kind of make a point of like trying not to do that type of stuff if they're like their quiet time. I try to do other things, but it's hard to remember that not everyone is who stays at home with their kids is also trying to balance all this other stuff with it.
Runs a farm. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like when I say it out loud, it's like, oh yeah, that does sound like a lot. But
Sounds like a lot.
yeah, but to me, it was just always like, I don't know, like this is just what I'm going to do. Like, never thought to, like, again, like when I was making decisions, I never thought, like, oh, should I have this type of career or should I try to raise a lot of our own food for our family or should I try to spend a lot of time in the kitchen with my kids? It was always like, that is going to happen if I have children. Like, that is how I want to raise them. So, and luckily I married a man who really loves to eat. So that's good. It's a
And
good
brews beer.
Brews beer.
Contributes.
Ooh.
Really good beer, I
You
think.
guys
Yeah.
are just self-sustaining,
Yeah, I
basically.
mean,
Down to the
the grain
beer.
is like
Down
shipped
to
to
the beer.
us. But,
Okay,
like
all
we're
right.
not, I don't know. You can get like I think you can also it can be unhealthy to get too much into I have to do everything myself. And like we're constantly reevaluating every season of life should really be doing or not. Like a big thing for us is I always thought we'd have a dairy cow or a dairy animal. Like that was like kind of the pinnacle of the homestead experience for me. And like, the kids and I would milk the cow together, we'd make cheese and whatever, but more like, I'm getting milk from another farmer who has grass-fed cows, which is awesome. And right now it's like, you know what? That's fine. That's still great. We're still making cheese. We don't have to go milk the cow. It's okay. So
You're making cheese.
sometimes like
Okay, I want to do
I
another
know.
episode with you
I
in like
know.
a few months and just dig
I'm
into
not really
like
like
what
I'm just dabbling with it. I don't know how to make a lot of cheeses or anything, but
my
yeah.
husband did it a few times in our downtown Seattle apartment, like had to go out of his way to get this raw milk and the rennet and whatever.
Uh-huh.
And I was less than impressed with his results, mostly because he like bloomed it or whatever the heck, like the brie he was making, he made in my wine fridge. And I
Oh
was
my
like,
goodness.
listen, buddy. All right.
Yeah.
That's my wine fridge.
Yeah. Like, come on.
Yeah, I have not
But-
tried anything like that. I've like made ricotta very easy.
Oh,
You like
okay, okay, okay.
like
Yeah.
you add an acid, it curdles, you take out the curds.
So
Done.
yummy though.
It's so good though. Yeah, exactly.
it.
And
Yeah, yeah.
basically I would like to have like a couple things like that and then like know how to make like a melting cheese like Colby or something like that. Because that's what
Ooh,
we use all the time. That'd be
cool.
great. Still haven't done it.
Yeah. Really want to come visit. I'm just fascinated now.
You're very welcome.
I love it. Okay, so like I'm clocking you now, like you were talking about your ideals and everything. It's kind of amazing. Like you seem to be a unicorn, like the more I'm chatting with you, because
Lyndon would think that's the greatest thing ever. She loves unicorns. She'd be like, my mom's a unicorn? What?
Yeah, totally. Well, like you just seem to have this sense of self and your values. And I just heard you say a few times, this is going to happen. This is what it's going to be. And this is before you met Eric. This is before you're a mom. You just have this really strong sense of like a groundedness in the way that you want to show up in the
But
world,
okay,
which is incredible.
but I want to say, like, I feel like it's easy for me to show up and be like, these are my values and I'm doing them, yay me, right? But like, I have to like remind myself of those values, especially through some seasons of life, like constantly. Like, why did I choose this? Like summer, like the fall is always hard for me because it's super busy on the farm. It's like back to school with, like homeschool stuff. We're like involved in a homeschool group that I teach science for. So there's a little extra work there. And then everybody else is going back to school, so it's like another school year that I'm not teaching. So the fall was hard, and even though I knew this is what I wanted to be doing, I didn't think, what I would love is 30 more hours of work every week. Like I didn't really want to go back part-time teaching or anything, but like I didn't feel it. Like I wasn't feeling like this is great, I love my life right now for whatever
Mm.
reason. Like, so it's not like living your values makes you feel great all the time. I don't
It's
know.
not
Like,
happy all the
Yeah.
time. It's not
yeah,
easy all the
but
time.
but I kept coming back to like, no, this is what I want, and I'm going to keep pushing through it. And now I'm to like, now it's winter. We're not nearly as busy. I'm getting work done around the house that got pushed off for several months, and I'm like, okay, I feel, like I feel more rejuvenated. But I don't want to make it sound like I just followed my values and everything was great, because I still mourn teaching a lot. Like I really
Hmm.
love teaching, and I may or may not go back to it someday. I still don't know, because I don't know what our family's going to need. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that's also a real trade-off, I guess.
Well, you beat me to the punch because I was going to ask you
Oh,
for some trade-offs or some like difficult
sorry.
things. No, it's perfect. Are there
Yeah,
relationships or like cultural, social shifts that have been more difficult for you or that you feel like you had to let go of,
because
either
of
in
motherhood or homesteading.
matrescence? Yes, both and either or.
Okay, well, since we are talking about homesteading, a big thing that I talk to Callie about a lot is like we're more geographically isolated than I would probably prefer. Like, and in my ideal world, we would live close to our community, but like most of our good friends are like Callie are in like Wausau, or like Eric has a really good friend from work who lives like an hour away. So that's not an ideal. I'm trying to think with motherhood. Obviously, everyone's like relationship to work changes. So like, my workplace was interesting because people were very much pro motherhood. They like felt moms were an extremely important part of society. But because of that, me working as a mom wasn't valued, which is a little
Oh,
weird. It was a weird situation. Like you
my
would
whole
think,
body just reacted negatively to that.
yeah, it was unfortunate. And I say, I mean, I can't, a few individuals, probably not, I'm not saying like the whole, I don't, maybe that was something I sensed that I projected on people. I'm not sure, but that was how I felt. Like I felt like I needed to show up professionally the way I had before. Um,
And I think it's
yeah,
important to, like, if you are in that sort of workplace where you do say you value mothers, like, just from experiencing my workplace right now where they do say they value mothers, and they just seem to be like congratulating me all the time, like, oh, you have your kid with you at work today, great job, like,
yeah.
oh, you need to make a little more money to support your family, like,
Good for
you're
you,
like,
right?
honestly, like, I feel so supported. So
Yeah.
I do think you can say you support mothers, but unless you're like going out of your way truly to say, like, I don't know, thank you, good job, like giving
And to be
affirmation
like letting
and
the kid be
them,
there.
yes, yes,
That's
Mhm.
like
huge
supporting
because
having that
that's not
child there.
professional,
Yeah.
right? But
If you're
that's
not
like,
doing that, you're not really supporting them. That's how
right.
I
And that's
feel.
like the matriarchy, right? That's what I was saying earlier is like the kids. Like, that's great. And a big part of it was like, I wanted, I don't know if I would have brought Lyndon if I had the chance. I think I think this was the case for you too, like wanting to have, like, I want to go work. And then at the same time, learning to do those things together can be really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
And you
hearing
need
like
people to say
trust.
that's okay.
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
workplace trusting women to do their job and do what's best for their
Yes.
family, which will look unique for each situation,
Yeah. And
rather than saying, here's my vision of let me like love on moms, but the way I think it ought to be,
yeah.
saying, hey, what do you need? How can I best support you?
I think about it, I think I also, it was a lot of me putting on myself, like, because I'm a mom now doesn't mean I don't show up just like I always did and I'm the same person, right? Like I had no concept of matrescence. I really wish I would have known that word. I'm really glad you guys are putting it out there. So I think a lot of that was me too. Like I felt like I had to perform as a teacher the way I always had.
Based on
Hmm.
what you were saying about your response to work,
Hmm.
would you say that you were expecting yourself to bounce back? And how do you feel about
Yeah.
that phrase?
So I didn't hear that phrase before. Similarly to you in that episode, I like have a big like gut reaction against it because now I'm just like, no, like I'm a mom now, like through a huge life change. In fact, this makes me think of like one time I was at work, like pretty newly postpartum after Sigurd. I was sitting and having lunch with one of my coworkers and watching the kids at recess like we did every other day of that school year. And I was just sitting there looking out and I was like, wow, it's like all so different since I left. And she was like, actually, I think you're different. And she was 100% right, because there was literally there was nothing different about those kids running around playing the same game they probably played all year. But I was like, oh yeah, like, yeah, I'm different now. I'm Sigurd's mom now. Like,
Which was baby number 2.
which is baby number 2, but each baby,
Yeah.
like I do think the first time is like you go through matrescence and that's a different change, but every time you're also like, now I'm this person's mother, like, and that's another change. I used to have a sense of like I wanted to go back or whatever, and now I'm like I don't want to be the same person. Like I'm really glad I'm not the same person. And obviously, like when when anyone has a life-changing experience, we're not like, well, that was great, but when are you going to be the person you were before that, right? Like you study abroad, right? Like that changes your life, but and then you tell people about it, and they're not like, but when are you going to be like the real Emily? Like I'm just like,
Yeah.
now I'm just like transformed. So yeah, so that concept is really problematic. I didn't have an understanding of that, I think, at the time, and I wasn't ready to be transformed by
Mhm.
motherhood, I think.
Yeah.
Right. That was very focused on like still balancing all the things, still balancing the job and still balancing the home life and the homesteading interests and my other interests or whatever. But I think like instead of bouncing back, it's more like I want to dive in. Like I don't want to bounce back to where I
Mhm.
was. I want to like dive into this like new phase of life with this new person in it.
I
So
keep thinking like dig deeper, similar, like
yeah.
same thing. For some reason, like going down, going deep, like sussing out the core of the situation
Yeah.
is
Well,
my
especially when you were
impulse.
talking about like maybe bouncing back is a useful phrase if you're looking at someone who's very freshly postpartum, and you can like I think you can ask like has she recovered from that physical event from some, but like kind of like start thinking like, well, has she like dove into this, right? Like if I'm checking on a friend when she's postpartum, it's like
Oh,
has she like
Embraced
right,
this.
yes, like maybe her house is a total mess and she still has some like pelvic floor issues, like, or maybe a lot of pelvic floor issues, or maybe this or maybe that, or maybe like has an issue with the older kid or whatever. But like I see a woman in that situation, I'll often I'm like, well, but she's really dove into this. Like she's holding that baby and she loves that baby. Great. Awesome.
that's
Good.
such a good reframe. Like
It's
I
so much better than
love
like, has she
that.
bounced back? Because like,
Yes. Like,
yeah,
is she here for it? Is she present? Is she
yeah.
like is she getting her hands dirty,
Is
like
she
on
sobbing?
purpose?
Right? Like that
Yeah.
might be like a, like what kind of, or even like what kind of sobbing is that? Is that a sobbing like she knows I'm here
Sure.
for her? Is that a like actual desperation? Right? Like that's
Yeah.
something to really look for. I'd want someone to look out for me that way, but not ask me if I bounce back because that's not
Right.
helpful.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Oof.
I want
yeah.
to I'm just like thinking about the fact that you were ice skating before this.
Okay.
You given your like you fully dove in, dived
I
in. You
don't know. See, I don't know thing.
In the
Ooh.
deep end. She's in the deep
You're in the
end.
deep end. You've embraced motherhood. Like
Yes.
you love on those children and your husband and this life at
Yeah.
home. So I think I just want to know, especially for listeners who don't know you as well, like how do you feel like you're staying true to yourself, even though that self is new and different?
Yeah. Well, motherhood really helped me. I'm just like so interested in so many things. And I always had so many ideas for things I could do in life outside of I don't know, just whatever. It just really helped me focus. And it also helped me understand like what it actually means to prioritize things. Like I had heard
Mm.
like you make time for the things you prioritize, but I always had my checklist. I was always organized, but I never like sat down and was like, what's like, and I always thought like family is important to me. Eric's important to me, but motherhood made me go like, okay, like if Eric is important to me, that means I need to do certain things to like make sure I'm building my relationship with him, right? My relationship with my kids is important to me. Like, what does that? So it really helped me. And then when it came to things that's like, well, I don't have time to just pursue whatever I'm interested in anymore. So now the question is more like, well, I think it's important for me to have time to rest and rejuvenate. So what activities are actually important? And I ended up settling like one of those things was something I hardly even did before I had kids, and then I ended up making time for because I realized actually this is really important to me, which I think is unusual. I usually hear moms about like making time for this thing they used to love and spent a bunch of time doing,
Mhm.
and now they just have a
Yeah.
little. But for me, it was like
Mhm.
I love the natural world, and nature journaling was something I always enjoyed doing. I shared it with my students. like Naomi, your sister, had to keep a nature journal.
Yes. I
So
think mom
she
made
can
us
tell
do
you all
that
about it.
also at
She
different
did, yeah.
points.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very
Yep.
classical school thing. But anyway, but then I was like, this is going to rejuvenate me as a mom and a teacher. So like when we lived in Madison, I started taking like I think an hour every Sunday to go nature journaling, and I still do that now. And then like
Wow.
at this phase, I can like spend time like doing some like I enjoy like just drawing birds or just like Callie knows this. Like I really enjoy drawing or painting things from the natural world. So like now I can make time for that every day, even if I can't like go on a walk. But that was something I didn't know was important to me until I had to like I had such limited time. And I was like, if I'm gonna make time for something, like what is it gonna be? You know? So
Mhm.
Kind of the constraints there bred deeper curiosity or
yeah. Yeah, it
creativity.
did.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And it also helped me like, or I was also like, if I had spare time, I wanted to like work towards some goal, but like nature journaling isn't something you can like make a career out of or like start an Etsy shop for or whatever. And it
Right.
was really helpful for me to let go of that kind of mindset and literally just do something because I enjoyed it. Like, I don't know if I knew how to do that since I was like in middle school
Huh.
without having some kind of like external goal. You know, I had like other hobbies,
Yeah.
but there are always like goals involved or like, you know, for like music, like there was this performance we're working toward or whatever. It's so nice to just be like, I'm just going to go draw this bird because it's beautiful and I like it. I'm not even good at drawing it, but I just want to go draw it, you know?
You're pretty good at drawing them, but yeah.
I'm not starting an Etsy shop anytime soon.
Right.
I
So
think I'm going to be doing some self-examination surrounding this topic,
I know.
roughly until Sunday at least. So
Really trying to think what
cheers.
I'm doing.
well,
for...
honestly, okay, but this part of the reason that got me on this was one of the people I taught with, who I would almost consider like the matriarchal teacher, was like really encouraged us to spend time resting on Sunday. She was like, don't work on Sunday, and I didn't really take that seriously for a while. But she kept saying, she was like, you don't just like stop working. You like if you have, she would always say, like if you had tickets to the Packers game, Sunday's out. You wouldn't plan anything on Sunday. So she's like, imagine you have tickets to the Packers game on Sunday. Like you don't just say, I'm not working on Sunday. You say, I'm going to go nature journaling. And I only did it for an hour. I didn't do it all day because obviously I had a baby. But like, I was like, okay, for this hour, like that's just it. That's what's scheduled during that time. It doesn't matter what else needs to get done. You know, obviously I made sure Eric had Lyndon, but like,
Yeah.
you know, and I would go like probably when she was like when I was breastfeeding, if she didn't take a bottle well, so I'd probably go when she was napping or something, you know. But yeah,
I love that. What makes you feel beautiful, or if that's too hard to answer, what makes you feel valued as a woman or mother or wife?
Probably Eric. That's kind of old fashioned, but being around Eric really makes me feel beautiful. To be honest,
That's so cute.
like
That's
I don't
really
know.
cute.
Like,
Well, you
yeah.
know what Emily's husband said? He said sex. So
To the beautiful one?
maybe
No,
it was
you
valued.
asked him valued, yeah. Which his,
You know,
yeah.
I don't want to speak for Eric, but I wouldn't be surprised if he said that.
I'm like, yeah, no one here is surprised. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for just being such an amazing role model in my life. I'm so glad you two met.
Me too.
Yeah, I feel like we could talk for like hours next time Emily comes
Yeah,
to visit.
I really
100%.
think Fall Fest is going to be
This should be a
lit.
thing.
Can we do
Yes.
Spring Fest though? Just because that's sooner, you know?
Well,
that's
I
true.
keep telling Callie, like, you know, how you guys have the tradition of lighting the candles on the Christmas tree and having people
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to do that for Easter. I was like, I want to take one of our little fruit trees
Oh.
outside that are only like 10 feet tall and like put some like dorky paper decorations on it and like sit around this tree and sing songs. This is like a vision I have. It might happen this year.
Well, thank you so much. This was beautiful. You've been listening to The Real Mom Hub. Our music is by Naomi O'Leary. You can find us on social at The Real Mom Hub. We're not the authority or even very educated on the medical issues discussed. Do your own research, talk to an expert, make your own decisions, and call us if you learn anything new.
If you like what you hear, follow us on Instagram, or better yet, subscribe to our newsletter. If you don't, that's fine. We can all move on. Our purpose here is community, so if we've resonated with you, tell a friend.
Thanks for listening.